Did you know while filming Tombstone that Michael Biehn 25 years later stated that he barely said 5 words to director George P. Cosmatos on set? The reason for this animosity was that according to Biehn, Cosmatos treated extras and people he saw as beneath him with utter contempt whilst also sucking up to anyone above him. Let's hear it in his own words.
I said 5 words to him the entire time I made that movie, and he was the director he got credited for directing that movie. I met him. I said hello, and then the next day I watched him directing the way he treated people. The next time he approached me, he said, "Michael," and I said, "Go fuck yourself. If you were above him on the food chain, he'd kiss your ass." So he tried to kiss my ass. But if you were below him on the food chain, he'd treat like shit.
Do you remember in Tombstone when Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday were speaking in Latin? I'll let the audio play and put the translation in captions. Enjoy.
In vino veritas.
Age quod
Creda Judaea sotella non ego.
Eventus stultorum magister.
In pace requiescat.
Come on, boys. We don't want any trouble in here, not in any language.
That's Latin, darling. Evidently, Mr. Ringo's an educated man. Now I really hate him.
Contrary to the movie Tombstone, Johnny Ringo did not die at the hands of Doc Holliday. On July 14, 1882, Ringo's body was found lying against the trunk of a large tree in West Turkey Creek Valley, near Chiricahua Peak in Arizona Territory. A property owner heard a single gunshot on the afternoon of July 13 and discovered Ringo's body the following day. His feet were wrapped in strips of cloth torn from his undershirt, probably because his horse had gotten loose from its picket and bolted with his boots tied to the saddle. There was a bullet hole in his right temple and an exit wound at the back of his head. A coroner's inquest stated his cause of death as unknown, but supposed by gunshot. His body is buried near the base of the tree where it was discovered. Did you know in Tombstone that as extraordinary as the scene is in which Wyatt kills Curly Bill in the creek, it is true? During the shootout in the creek, when Wyatt kills Curly Bill, the next person he shoots is Johnny Barnes. As in real life, Wyatt shoots Barnes in the stomach. However, Barnes was not killed on sight. He managed to escape and died in a farmhouse. However, before dying, he told the story of how Wyatt really did walk into a hail of Curly Bill's gunfire unscathed, walked right up to Bill, and shot him point blank with both barrels of a double-barreled shotgun. In Tombstone, Doc Holliday was known more as a gunslinger, but did you know some years after his death, Wyatt Earp was quoted in an interview as saying, "Doc was a dentist, not a lawman or an assassin, whom necessity had made a gambler, a gentleman whom disease had made a frontier vagabond, a philosopher whom life had made a caustic wit, a long lean ash-blonde fellow nearly dead with consumption, and at the same time the most skillful gambler and the nerviest, speediest, deadliest man with a six that I ever knew."
Val Kilmer's portrayal of Doc Holliday is widely regarded as one of the best performances of his career. He lost weight and worked with a dialect coach to perfect the southern accent and mannerisms of the character. Before considering Kilmer for the role of Holliday, Willem Dafoe was the choice. However, Dafoe was a smidge controversial at the time, having just starred in Martin Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ. Buena Vista Pictures, who distributed the film in the United States, reportedly said they would pull out of the distribution deal if Dafoe were cast. Kilmer also laid in a bed of ice for his death scene so it would look authentic.
Did you know in Tombstone that the line quoted by Doc at the end of the fight at the OK Corral is historically true, and was reported in the Tombstone papers reporting the fight? When confronted by one of the cowboys at point-blank range, this verbal exchange is accurate.
I got you now, you son of a bitch.
You're a daisy if you do.
Did you know in Tombstone that Doc Holliday whistling on the way to the OK Corral and his wink to Billy Clanton just before the culmination of the OK Corral gunfight was completely improvised by Val Kilmer? Another interesting fact is Val Kilmer practiced for a long time on his quick-draw speed, and gave his character a Southern aristocrat accent. The Southern accent is an authentic touch, as Holliday was a cousin several generations removed of Margaret Mitchell, author of Gone with the Wind. Did you know in Tombstone that all the actors sport period-appropriate mustaches? As it turns out, though, the only special effect involved in most of the actors' mustaches was wax. Original director Kevin Jarre was very specific about how he wanted the mustaches. He wanted them to curl up on the end. Which meant if you grow a mustache, and it grows long enough, you have to use wax on the end of it. Everyone was pretty proud that they grew their own mustache. All except one. John Tenney didn't grow one because he was filming another movie before production on this one wrapped, so he was allowed to have a fake one.
Unlike in Tombstone, Billy Claiborne was convinced a man named Buckskin Frank Leslie killed Johnny Ringo. He was so convinced that he returned to Tombstone in 1882 and, while being very drunk, confronted Leslie in the Oriental Saloon. After being forced to leave, he lay in wait outside with a rifle and opened fire on Leslie when he walked into the street, but missed, and Leslie promptly fired his pistol and hit Claiborne in the chest. As he died, Claiborne's last words were reported to be, "Frank Leslie killed Johnny Ringo. I saw him do it." You may remember Billy Bob Thornton playing a bully by the name of Johnny Tyler in Tombstone, but did you know that he improvised every single one of his lines? Given that the film's gargantuan script had led to the director-screenwriter, Kevin Jarre, being fired, it's interesting to learn that Johnny Tyler had no listed lines at all. Instead, Thornton was instructed by the film's ghost director, George P. Cosmatos, simply to be a bully when facing Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp.
Did you know in Tombstone that in order to gain the trust and respect of the actors he ended up unofficially directing, Kurt Russell cut out 20 pages from the Tombstone script, including several of his own scenes. Russell recalls, "We needed to lose 20 pages. There's only one way I'm going to get the trust of these actors, and that is to cut myself out of this movie." Russell's co-star Val Kilmer later praised Russell's selfless approach. "I watched Kurt sacrifice his own role and energy to devote himself as a storyteller," Kilmer wrote in a 2017 blog post, as compiled by The Hollywood Reporter. "Kurt is solely responsible for Tombstone's success, no question."
Throughout the production behind Tombstone, Val Kilmer's method acting approach saw him taking a few extreme measures to get into character. When it came time to shoot Doc Holliday's death scene, for instance, Kilmer wanted this demise to look, and, for him, feel, authentic as his historical outlaw character was lying on his deathbed. For that to happen, Kilmer laid in a bed of ice. So, when you see Holliday shivering uncontrollably, that wasn't merely acting on Kilmer's part. He was genuinely freezing in order to make Holliday's death more authentic. The scene came to Kilmer's own personal satisfaction, as he was pleased with how